It is the 7th of August, 1917, and somewhere in the cold, gray expanse of the North Atlantic, a battered merchant vessel wallows through 3-meter swells. She is the HMS Dunraven, and to every eye that might observe her from a distance, she is nothing more than what she appears to be, a tired, weathered British cargo ship, running alone, underarmed, and wholly vulnerable. Her hull is streaked with rust. Her deck is cluttered with innocuous crates. A small defensive gun sits visible at her stern, the kind of token armament that merchant shipping had taken to carrying since the U-boat campaign began in earnest. She is, in every observable way, prey. Beneath the surface, roughly 400 meters off her port quarter, the German submarine UC-71 has already spotted her. The U-boat's commander studies her through the periscope, and what he sees confirms everything he expected. A slow-moving freighter, alone, with minimal armament. Easy. The mathematics of the Atlantic War are simple in his mind. Surface, engage, sink. It is a calculation he has made dozens of times. He orders the boat to battle stations. What he cannot see, what no U-boat commander could ever see until it was far too late, is that the Dunraven is not what she appears to be. Her crew are not frightened merchant sailors praying for salvation. They are Royal Navy men, veterans, trained to the point of automation in a single elaborate performance. Beneath those rusted panels and behind those seemingly ordinary bulkheads sit 4-inch naval guns, two 12-pounders, multiple smaller weapons, and a torpedo tube. The crates on deck are false fronts. The rust is carefully maintained. Every detail of the deception has been rehearsed until it is second nature. This is a Q ship, and the Dunraven has been waiting for exactly this moment. The story of Britain's Q ships is one of the most audacious deceptions in naval history, a program so extraordinary in its psychology, so deliberate in its cruelty, and so necessary in its desperation that it bordered on the theatrical. These were vessels designed not merely to fight, but to entice, to seduce, to manipulate the enemy into making a fatal assumption. They were floating traps disguised as floating victims, and for a period of the First World War, they were among the most dangerous ships in the Royal Navy. To understand why they existed at all, it is necessary to understand just how catastrophically the U-boat was winning. By the spring of 1915, Imperial Germany had concluded something that the British Admiralty was deeply reluctant to admit, that the submarine, properly deployed, could strangle the British Isles into submission. Britain imported roughly 60% of its food supply. Its war industries depended on materials shipped across the Atlantic and from its empire. Its armies in France required a constant flow of ammunition, weapons, and equipment, all of it vulnerable at sea. The island nation that had ruled the waves for 2 centuries was, at its core, dependent on those waves in a way that Germany was not. The U-boat campaign that began in earnest in February 1915 was not a campaign designed to win individual engagements. It was designed to win a war of attrition, to make the cost of supplying Britain so high that continuation of the conflict became impossible. In the first unrestricted phase of submarine warfare, German U-boats sank over 855,000 tons of Allied shipping in 1915 alone. By 1917, when Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare after a period of restraint, they were sending nearly 900,000 tons to the bottom every single month. In April 1917, the losses were so severe that the Admiralty privately calculated Britain had 6 weeks of food reserves remaining. The conventional naval responses to the U-boat were, at this stage, largely inadequate. The Royal Navy's surface fleet was designed to fight other surface fleets, not to hunt submarines in an ocean the size of the Atlantic. Depth charges were in their infancy, primitive and unreliable. Hydrophone technology, the passive listening devices that would eventually allow submarines to be tracked acoustically, was still being developed and had significant limitations in rough sea conditions. Aircraft were too short-ranged and too fragile to conduct sustained anti-submarine patrols over the open ocean. The convoy system, which would eventually prove the most decisive countermeasure, was resisted by senior admiralty figures who believed it would simply concentrate targets rather than protect them. The U-boat had an additional tactical advantage that made it extraordinarily difficult to counter. The standard German doctrine during much of the war was not to torpedo every vessel on sight. Torpedoes were expensive, limited in supply, and valuable. Instead, U-boat commanders would surface, approach a target, and use their deck gun to sink the ship at close range, conserving torpedoes for more significant targets. This practice of surfaced gun attacks created an unexpected vulnerability, only if someone could devise a way to exploit it. The ship had to be worth approaching. It had to be worth surfacing for. It had to look in every particular like something that a U-boat commander could attack safely from the surface with his deck gun and not fear the consequences. And that calculation gave the British Admiralty a slender, dangerous idea. The genesis of the Q-ship program is typically traced to Commander Gordon Campbell, one of the most decorated naval officers of the First World War, and to the broader organizational framework created by the Admiralty's Trade Division under Admiral Henry Oliver. But the concept preceded his personal involvement, with early experimental vessels operating as far back as late 1914 under the direction of the Admiralty itself. The underlying principle was deceptively simple and psychologically sophisticated. If a U-boat could be made to surface in order to use its deck gun, and if that U-boat could be made to approach close enough to guarantee a killing shot, then a disguised vessel capable of unmasking concealed armament could destroy the submarine before it had any chance to escape. The selection of vessels was the first critical decision. The Q-ship had to be convincingly ordinary. Too large, and the disguise became implausible. Too small, and it offered little reward to a U-boat commander calculating the effort of a surface engagement. The Admiralty settled on a range of vessel types: tramp steamers, coastal colliers, sailing ships, and tankers, chosen specifically because they were the kind of tonnage that a U-boat commander would feel entirely comfortable approaching. They needed to look tired. They needed to look underarmed. Most crucially, they needed to look alone and afraid. The concealed armament varied across individual vessels, but a typical Q-ship of the Middle War period might carry 2 or 4 4H naval guns hidden behind false deck structures, panels that could be dropped in under 3 seconds by a trained crew pulling release mechanisms. Additional 12-pounder guns sat concealed beneath hinged housing units made to resemble cargo containers, ventilator cowls, or deck winches. Torpedo tubes were installed on several vessels behind retractable hull plates. The crates on deck were false fronts. The rust was carefully maintained. Every detail of the deception has been rehearsed until it is second nature. This is a Q-ship, and the Dunraven has been waiting for exactly this moment. The operational record of the Q-ships is a mixture of documented triumph, frustrating failure, and moments of extraordinary personal courage that sit uncomfortably alongside some of the moral ambiguities inherent in deception warfare. Between 1915 and 1917, Q-ships are credited with the confirmed destruction of between 15 and 27 U-boats, depending on the source and the strictness of the evidentiary standard applied. The range of that estimate reflects the difficulties of confirmation in an era before underwater sensors could reliably confirm kills. A submarine that failed to return to port might have been destroyed by a Q-ship, mined, or lost to mechanical failure, and the records were not always sufficient to determine which. The engagement that brought Commander Gordon Campbell his Victoria Cross illustrates both the method and the cost. On February 17, 1917, Campbell's vessel, HMS Farnsworth, disguised as a collier, was struck by a torpedo from U-83 west of Ireland. Rather than revealing his weapons, Campbell ordered his panic party into the lifeboats and kept the hidden fighting crew at their stations. He then waited, immobile and flooding, as U-83 surfaced and slowly approached to confirm the kill. The patience required was extraordinary. The Farnsworth was genuinely sinking, her crew in genuine danger, and still Campbell held his fire.
Only when the submarine was close enough to guarantee a killing engagement did he give the order. The hidden panels dropped, the guns fired. U-83 was destroyed. Campbell was awarded the Victoria Cross. His crew received a total of 3 DSOs, 2 DSCs, and 39 other decorations, an extraordinary concentration of gallantry awards for a single action that speaks to what those men endured in the performance of their deception. The Baralong incident of 19 August 1915 represented the darker dimension of Q-ship operations. After sinking U-27 with concealed weapons, the crew of Baralong under Lieutenant Commander Herbert shot a number of surviving German sailors in the water and then killed a further group who had sought refuge aboard a nearby merchant vessel. The German government filed formal protests. The British government conducted an inquiry that effectively exonerated